So if I was supposed to do it again, I would probably quit my job earlier and put all that effort into my business.
All right, welcome to another episode of V2 Virginia's Vanguards. I've got my special guest today is Curtis Cornwall. Curtis is the owner of C&C Auto Detail. I've known him for a long time, and full disclosure, he's my brother-in-law, right? So I love him, but I love more the fact that he's an entrepreneur just like me. So as I've been on my entrepreneurial journey, he's been on his, and but he started his long before me. So we're gonna have fun today talking to Curtis about C&C Auto Detail, but more so about the journey that got him to where he's at today. They are in Northern Virginia, and he told me it's like a technical address of Leesburg, Virginia, but the truth is it's like 100% mobile, which I love because that means during the pandemic he didn't have to worry about people coming to work, right? So, with no further ado, I'll let Curtis jump in here and just introduce himself and share a little bit about who he is.
so my name is Curtis Cornwall. I was born in Jamaica, migrate to New York, um, early 1980s or 1982. Grew up in New York, went to Lawrence High School. Graduated from the Lawrence High School, went to college, George Mason, finished college, 1995, 95, 96. Um, Graduated with a degree in geography. Um, did geospatial work for 10 years or so. Um,
Now you weren't just hanging out being a student at George Mason. You ran. I mean, you weren't Usain Bolt, but I heard you used to run around the track.
oh yeah, had a track scholarship from Lawrence High School to George Mason, and that's how I was able to pay for school. Ran the 800 meters. Was pretty good. 1994, we won Penn Relays 4 by 800 meters championship of America. So that was a big milestone of my athletic career.
So I find it interesting, Curtis, that a lot of entrepreneurs are athletes. I think it's probably a combination of being okay with competition, but also the discipline that athletics requires you to have in order to be successful. What do you make of that observation?
Yes, I agree. It's having that so-called killer instinct. I remember competing in 800 meters. It's one of those races that is speed endurance. So you have to be mentally prepared to run the race. And I think that kind of helped me, um, start my own business, even though there were risks. Um, I always look at the side of succeeding, right? Even though there were risk, accomplishing my goal, which is, to have a successful company, overweigh the risks that were there. Um,
Yeah, so you have an interesting entrepreneurial journey. I've witnessed it obviously, firsthand, but I think the folks tuning in today are going to enjoy hearing it because it's both gradual, but it's also like consistent. I mean, you mentioned the geography major. I don't think I think you're the only geography major I know. Like in my entire network, I think you're the only one. But but what drew you to that major, and then how did that jumpstart you into the first part of your career?
so my goal, my major, the preferred major for me, was engineering. But being a student athlete, that requires so much studying, and of course, being on a full scholarship, we had a lot of traveling, and I just didn't have the time. So the closest thing to engineering was mapping, which was geospatial analyst. So I went that route. No, I did some neat stuff. we work with satellite imagery, topographic maps. We did a lot of pre-work for developers highways. It was kind of cool. So that, and I enjoy doing it. Now the transition from geospatial analyst to detailing cars. I worked with this company called Aerometric for approximately uh 10 years, so 13 years. Um,
And now a word from our sponsor.
This is Christian Simpson, and I'm with Virginia Injury Law. We're the proud sponsors of V2, Virginia's Vanguards, and we are indeed the largest Black-owned personal injury firm in Virginia. Look us up at 1-800-CRASH-VA or crashva.com, and you can find me online at Call Christian VA. Here's the thing, too, because, you've had all these different, I'll call them side hustles, right?
Mhm.
And so give us like a peek into some of the different things that you did in addition to the geospatial analyst position that you had, like your steady job.
Oh, okay, so if I can start from like high school and then you can,
Yeah.
shuffle stuff around. So, um, while I was running a Mason, right, I would go back to New York for summer. And my summer job was parking cars, right? So, you know, summer job, parking cars, making a lot of money in tips. So what I usually do is when I'm parking cars, have these nice cars. So I'll tell my customers, hey, while you're in there eating, we can wash your car for, 30, 40, $50. So I started doing that and, I always seem to have this passion for being around cars. So my first summer, I did that. Then second year of college, of course, I stayed in Northern Virginia. Um, and I said, you know what? I can actually, wash cars and try to see if I can make a buck out of it. So I had a job at a dealership that summer, as Honda of Fairfax, detailing cars. And I was pretty good at it, making $7 an hour. So I said, you know what? This is pretty lucrative. Dealership are charging $150 per car. I can try something. So later that summer, I kind of made some flyers, and start handing flyers out. So from that summer, I had maybe five, customers, and went back to school the next year. And while I was in college, of course, I couldn't work because I was on a full scholarship. Then the next summer again, I did the same thing, and it grew to like 10 or maybe 15 cars. Um, so I end up, creating a website and having a website, at least, it's more audience,
Right.
right? So I kept, getting, more customers, and it just kept growing little by little. Um, then of course, when I finished college, I started the geospatial job. Then the company still kept growing, and I'm like, I'm not gonna walk away from it. So I end up doing weekends. Then my weekends were pretty busy. So what I asked my boss at Aerometric, was a mapping job, said, hey, can I work night shift or evening shift? So by doing that, I was able to grow my business. So from 20, 30 cars, I was up to like 100.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and it just kept growing. Then, skip to 2002, we had a CarMax, a call from CarMax, said, hey, can you guys, you know, clean our cars? And all of a sudden, I'm like, wow. So, and this was like, we had to wet sand, buff, interior shampoo because this contract would have to put the cars, on the front lot so people can buy them. I mean, have them look brand new.
Yeah.
So it was a big leap from just doing, car wash for regular folks to a commercial. And of course, that required me to hire more people. So I had like 5 people from there, and it just kept growing from there.
So, first of all, I think it's amazing that it started off for you as a summer job, right? That you realized, hey, you know what? I can take this actually, a little bit further while you're in school, which I think, being a Division I athlete, people have no idea just how serious that time commitment is unless you've done it or know somebody who's done it. But the other thing that really strikes me is that you were able to get in early. I guess you call it on the internet, right? I mean, you basically get a website up, and this is before everybody's like, "Oh, you got to be online to market." But you were ahead of the curve, and putting yourself online.
Yes, indeed.
That's amazing. So, the other thing I think that a lot of entrepreneurs have questions about is when to make the jump, right? Like I was in a position myself working the steady job, quote unquote, and then had to figure, okay, at what point in time do I make the jump and say, I'm doing my own thing full time the whole way. Like we all watch Shark Tank and, they're like, are you committed to this? And, all that kind of stuff. So for you, like, when was that time where you're like, okay, it's now, like, I need to commit to this full time?
So that time was clearly because I ended up doing 2 jobs for a while, like 2 full-time jobs with the business and working at Aerometric. So it was 2010, I believe, when I went away for vacation, and when I got back, went to work, I got pulled in the office, and my boss, um, told me that, we had a layoff and you don't have a job.
Oh, wow.
So, I'm like, whoa. And he was like, well, you know, we know you have a business. You, even though you're one of our better worker, you will be okay because you have a successful business. So, yeah. So I end up, say, okay. And, gave me a good severance. Then anyway, like a week later, they called me back and said, oh, we decided we want to rehire you. We made a big mistake. So I end up going back for maybe a week or so, and I'm like, man, what am I doing? Um, so I went back. Then I put in a leave of absence that, hey, I'm gonna think about this for a while. And long story short, I never went back. Right.
Love it.
So I would, recommend if you have a passion and you believe in yourself, I would stick to it. So if I was supposed to do it again, I would probably quit my job earlier and put all that effort into my business. So if I have done that, I think I would probably double the size of my business right now.
You basically asked the question that I was about to ask, right? Because every entrepreneur that I speak with says the same thing. I wish I had started earlier.
Yeah.
Like almost invariably, that's what it comes back to is, man, I was scared, of course, and it's all you, everything is on you. But then when they think about it, they almost always say, I wish I just jumped in the deep end earlier because I'd be
Yeah,
much further ahead.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's crazy. So what things, I mean, you got online early. What strategies have been really effective and impactful for you in terms of growing your business?
You know, funny, right? Just like we're doing this podcast right now. I remember the first we did a Washington Post did an article on us. I think it when it was 2000, early 2000,
Yeah.
and from that article, our business probably grew probably double or triple.
Wow. So earned
Yeah,
media. Yeah.
oh yeah, that
Yeah.
yep.
And I remember that article because I was fresh out of law school, and a buddy of mine was the one who said, "Hey, isn't this your brother-in-law in the in the newspaper?" And I said, "Yeah,
Yeah.
actually that's him." So yeah, that earned media really boosted you in terms of awareness of what you guys were doing.
Absolutely.
That's great. That's great. Now, most of us have never run a business before, right? And I know that a lot of the education that comes into running a business is the quote unquote school of hard knocks, right? You learn as you go. Um, have you found whether it's other business owners or mentors or anything like that, have you found folks that you've been able to bounce ideas off of or ask questions of, or have you just kind of said, you know what, I'm gonna figure it out as I go?
You know, friends and family, always, you know, appreciate, especially client of mine, good friend, Frederick Singer. He used to be a senior VP for American Online. And I would always ask him, how how can I grow my business, or what do you recommend? And he always guide me from the website. My first website, he's the one that actually look it over.
Mhm.
Gave me a recommendation what to do. Um, and even today, a lot of my clients have become, great friends. I
Yeah,
would ask them certain stuff, and they would give me great pointers of what to do, what not to do. Um,
that makes so much sense. I think one of the things that I've always ascribed to is the idea that uh you're continually learning, right? And definitely as an owner, as anybody in the world, but definitely as a business owner, you have to always kind of have your ears open for things that can help you be better at what you're doing. And I know your clientele in particular, you mentioned a guy who's high up at what was then a ridiculously big company, AOL. Um, your clientele in particular, I mean, you're running into a lot of folks who have, very high positions and obviously a lot of disposable income. So it sounds like you took advantage of that.
Absolutely. And even today, great, I say, client base and friends,
Mhm.
because even my business right now, it's like a family owned business. And most of my clients have to have trust because we basically go on their property. Most of our clients are in gated neighborhoods.
Mhm.
So that trust is huge, right? You can't just pick someone up off the street and say, come to my house.
Yeah.
You have to have that trust. And for me, I always appreciate, someone's opinion,
Mhm.
right? I would rather, you know, take a pointer from you to make $1 million instead of say, give me $10,000.
Right.
That's the way I look at it. And that goes a far way.
Yeah, well, that makes a ton of sense. So I'm curious. I know you mentioned it's a family-owned business. I know you've had your kids work in the business from time to time and other extended family. But what has it been like um, hiring, managing? I think that's another sort of step in the entrepreneurial journey when you start having people that you're responsible for and making sure that they're doing things the way that you demand them to be done and they're carrying out the vision that you have for your company.
Hiring is pretty difficult. So over the years, I tend not to pull myself away from the business, right? So even when we're out there working, I kind of blend myself in. There have been numerous cases that I'm working and someone will basically go to one of my team member and say, hey, think he or she is the boss, not me.
Okay.
So I kind of stay below the radar. Um, and I tend to, the family, stay in the family, meaning that if I hire someone from a certain family, they recommend someone that can work for us because
Okay.
our quality of work is super detailed and is extremely difficult, especially dealing with interior pet hair, sand, grime, cigarette smoke. Um, it can take a while, and a lot of new hires, 1 or 2 days, they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
if you're not disciplined, um, there's a good chance you're not going to make it. So even family members that worked for me in the past, it's a good foundation for them, to move forward with their life to another job. There's a good chance if you can't make it at CNC, it's going to be tough to make it elsewhere.
Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. And I know some of those stories. Those are offline stories, but
Yes.
I know some of the stories that you're talking about. Um, so at this point in time, you've got, as you mentioned, both a combination of regular clients as well as commercial clients. Um, are you comfortable with the size and scale of your business at the time or at this moment, or do you want to scale up even more? Like how many people do you have on your team right now?
Right now there are 8 of us. I have a full-time admin. Um, yes, we're still looking to grow. The commercial space is more lucrative right now. So right now, Hertz, we're at 2 airports at Hertz, IAD, and DCA, and CarMax, Fredericksburg. We're there occasionally, Dallas as well.
Okay.
We also have the Washington Nats account, in which, once the season starts, we're there probably once a week after every road trip. We have a bunch of cars to clean. Then we have a couple of hockey players, and our residential is pretty solid. It would be nice to get another solid commercial account. Um,
Yeah.
but we're growing.
When you think about the growth, sometimes it's organic, sometimes it's very much intentional and strategic. It sounds like you recognize, hey, on the commercial side, that definitely is more of a money maker over the long haul. Um, have you thought about the steps that it would take and what your life would look like, right? I mean, there's always this thing in entrepreneurship about, balancing work and family and all that kind of stuff. But do you have a vision for sort of what your ideal setup is in terms of how big the business is, how involved you are? Maybe you get an operations person that people think that, wow, this must be the owner, but actually, no, they're under you, right? So, have you had those kind of thoughts about, where you want to take your business?
Yeah, so my wife and I speak about this regularly. So, transitioning to retirement. So, um, my plan would be to train someone that can manage it and of course be a partner as well. Um, so I don't think my son have much interest in going that route. So I'm gonna have to
He's trying
look
to work for
outside the
me.
family. There you go. Uh, yeah, but why I will always have him around when when he's able to. Um,
Yeah,
yes, I've been thinking about that.
very cool. Very cool. Curtis, if you could talk to us a little bit about kind of what advice you might give to, people who are starting their entrepreneurial journey, trying to figure out what their passion is, like you figured it out, and maybe try to put money together or a team or whatever? Like, what are some things that as you look back, you think, man, if I could have done that first, that would have been helpful?
Um, I mean, first, I would say, whatever you decide you want to do, let's make sure you have passion for it. Um, because once you have that passion, stuff comes naturally. Like, sometimes the job, at least in my industry, the job is so hard. If it wasn't for love of it, it's like, man, some of these jobs I would just walk away from. So it was at first to have that passion, and secondly, you want to, have a layout in which that your money is not overused, right? You just kind of outline the things that you really, really need before you start spending money, right? For example, in my case, when I first started, I could easily, buy a new vehicle, new equipment, but I went the route of using my car. I basically work out the back of my car.
Hmm.
So easily say startup could have been $50,000. Startup for me probably was about $1,000, right? Because I had a car. Of course, I'm not taking account of the car. I had a car, and this vacuum, hose, pressure washers. Um, so my overhead right out the gate was pretty low. Um, of course, there's other business you're gonna spend more money out the gate than in there. So, but that's huge to kind of think of costs. You know, if you go that route, you don't have to, have a big investor coming in which gonna take most of your business, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, that's my perspective.
Yeah. Nah, and it's a good one because cash is king. Cash flow, whatever the
Yes,
business, whatever the industry is everything, right? I mean, you need the money to, let people know who you are. It sounds like you started out word of mouth, but then eventually grew and had a couple of events that, really catapulted you. But still, um, you got people to pay, right? You got your own
absolutely.
personal stuff to pay at home, and then when you finally, you know, I won't call it taking off the training wheels, but when you finally made the commitment and gave up the, the steady job, now you're like, okay, I'm all in. Like I have to be smart with, with the spending. So no,
Absolutely.
it's spot on advice actually. Um, all right. Well, I'm so glad you joined us today. We didn't really get deep, and I mean, you're a Jamaican guy, right? So, entrepreneurism for Jamaicans is like, it's like breathing. And I thought we'd get into some of your other hustles because you've done catering. I mean, you've done a bunch of other things. This is the thing that obviously animated you most, but give us a snapshot of just some of the other things that you've been involved in.
Oh man. So while I was in college, I had another job, of course, working at the Outback Steakhouse, and from my Jamaican heritage, we all can cook. So from there, I had a catering business that ran that for 4, 5, 6 years. On top of that, I trade stocks. So
Right,
that's actually one of the it requires work, but it's less manual labor.
right, right.
And that's probably the most lucrative one of all. So, you know, and again, I'll be more than happy to come on later again to probably, because we can't be here all day, you
I know.
know.
Well, our
Uh,
normal conversations at the family events are always epic because we're both in this business game and love it. Again, I appreciate you jumping on for just a little bit and sharing some of, your insights and experiences because there's so many people out there who are thinking about making the leap, or maybe they've made the leap and they're wondering like, how do I get better at what I'm doing? Your points about managing the money and then also being open to, to learning from other people who have already done it, seen it, and can give you good counsel. Like those two things right there, I'm telling you, like, I think we're probably worth their weight in gold for folks who are going to be watching this.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, man, before you go, tell people one more time your business and how they can, reach out, get a hold of you if they want to.
So my business is CNC Car Wash and Detail, and web address is cncautodetail.com. And we service Northern Virginia, Washington D.C., parts of West Virginia, parts of Maryland. We do anything from basic wash, clean, exterior wash, wax, buff, scratches, wet sand, ceramic coating, and our price is very reasonable.
Love it, love it, and I can vouch for it because he's done our cars as well. So, so I know that Curtis and CNC Detail are about excellence, and it's no surprise. So once again, thanks for coming on, and yeah, we'll have to have you on another time just to talk about how you have killed the stock market game, which I still think is amazing, right? Because it's not like you got like a degree in that or anything. You've just figured it out. So that's for the next time. Thank you, Curtis.
Thanks so much, Christian. Appreciate you, sir.
All right.
Have a great one. All right.
That's a wrap on today's episode of V2, where we celebrate the grit, innovation, and triumphs of minority entrepreneurs. A huge thank you to our guests today for sharing their journey and wisdom with us. Your story is truly inspiring. If you love this conversation, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs that extra push to chase their dreams. Remember, success isn't about where you start, but how determined you are to keep going. Your vision matters, your voice matters, so go build, create, and thrive. We'll see you next time on V2.